Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël.
Putting a mask on yourself is more to prevent you from infecting someone else. And if everybody does that, we're each protecting each other, because the data is it's more efficient to prevent transmitting to others than it is to prevent transmission to yourself.
Even though the benefits of wearing a mask apparently aren't enough to compel Donald Trump to wear one, the CDC is now recommending people wear cloth masks while out in public to help curb the spread of COVID-19. And joining me now is Dr. Ashish Jha, director of the Harvard Global Health Institute, and Jeremy Howard, founder of Masks for All. Thank you all for being here. Dr. Jha, I'm going to start with you first. To help stop coronavirus, everyone should be wearing face masks. That's actually Jeremy's piece, so I won't give you that piece. But can you explain the difference in thinking? Because the original thinking was masks were more important for somebody who's already sick to prevent other people from getting sick, but now the thinking has changed. How so?
Yeah, so we have more and more evidence. So we've known actually for a while that asymptomatic people who have no symptoms at all, can spread the disease. But that data has now really become crystal clear, I would say, over the last month or so. And therefore, when you're out in public, you're at a grocery store, you may be infected, you may be spreading the disease, but have no symptoms at all. And it becomes really important that you put on that mask. Because as Dr. Fauci said, we're all going to get through this together. And if we protect each other by wearing masks, it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, and now I will read the piece that Jeremy, you wrote. And you wrote, every country with enforced mask usage shows dramatically lower death rates compared to countries not using masks widely. Our affiliate in Miami, my former place of work, has noted that Miami Beach, the city of Miami Beach, has ordered employees and customers in stores to wear masks and facial coverings. That's as of Friday. Talk about your initiative to make sure, because there's one thing to say wear masks. The second thing is, how do you get them?
Yeah, so there's a couple of important things to know here. So as the doctor mentioned, the science is now clear. A Nature article that came out just showed that 100% of the time the coronavirus was blocked by a simple cloth cover. So you don't need a fancy N95 respirator. Leave them for the hospitals where they're doing dangerous procedures. You just got to cover your mouth. If you don't do so, you're protecting those, you're putting at risk those around you. And if you go out and see somebody else not wearing a mask, they're putting you at risk. This disease is a silent assassin. So the closest we have right now to a kind of imperfect vaccine is to cover up your face. The advisor on this to the WHO says this might be even more important than distancing. But that's how important this is. So it's not enough for you to do it. You need everybody in your community to do it, and that's why we need enforcement on this. If we hit a magic number, the number is 80%. If 80% comply, modeling suggests we can actually kill this virus off.
And Dr. Jha, I want to play you what Donald Trump had to say about this idea of wearing masks. And this is despite the fact that the CDC now contradicts him. Here he is on Friday.
The CDC is advising the use of non-medical cloth face covering as an additional voluntary public health measure. You can do it. You don't have to do it. I'm choosing not to do it, but some people may want to do it, and that's okay. Somehow sitting in the Oval Office behind that beautiful Resolute desk, the great Resolute desk, I think wearing a face mask as I greet presidents, prime ministers, dictators, kings, queens, I don't know, somehow I don't see it for myself.
Dr. Jha, he says you can do it, you don't have to do it. He doesn't want to, he's worried about the aesthetics of meeting. I'm not sure why he'd be meeting with prime ministers and kings and queens in his office, but he thinks the aesthetics of him wearing a mask wouldn't be good for himself. Your thoughts on his thoughts, Dr. Jha?
Yeah, so a principal element of leadership is modeling good behavior. And there is very clear evidence that we should be wearing masks when we're out in public. By the way, it is not a substitute for distancing. It alone isn't good enough, but it is a really important component of doing what is right for our society. And if it's a good thing for all of us to be doing, then the president should be modeling that behavior. That, in my mind, is fundamental to good leadership.
And very quickly to stay with you, here's Deborah Birx, who is, she's one of his experts, and she's saying this is her solution is don't go to the store. Take a listen.
The next 2 weeks are extraordinarily important, and that's why I think you've heard from Dr. Fauci, from myself, from the president and the vice president, that this is the moment to do everything that you can on the presidential guidelines. This is the moment to not be going to the grocery store, not going to the pharmacy, but doing everything you can to keep your family and your friends safe. And that means everybody doing the 6 feet distancing, washing your hands.
Dr. Jha, this again is confusing because we don't know how long, I'm right now in the D.C. area. We don't know how long people are going to have to be holed up. It seems to me that going to the grocery store and stocking up and going to the pharmacy or at least ordering your meds if you need them for the next couple of weeks seems to be exactly what you should be doing, particularly if you're wearing a mask. I don't understand the conflict between that and what she said. Do you?
Yeah. So what Dr. Birx is saying, and this is true, is that we really are in a crunch time. The next 2 weeks in many parts of the country are going to be the peak time for the disease. And so if you can limit, so if you have to go to the grocery store, you got to go to the grocery store. But if you can avoid it or pack all your purchases to one trip, wear a mask, wash your hands. Really use the next 2 weeks to tamp down on activity. It's going to be very, very important. So obviously, if you need your medicines, get your medicines. If you need food, get your food. But instead of making 4 trips to the grocery store, make 1 and really try to limit your activity for the next couple of weeks, because those are probably the 2-3 most important weeks in terms of the peak of the infection in large parts of the country.
Yeah, and Jeremy, so please explain your initiative, Masks for All. Tell us what is the purpose of it and how do people get involved?
Okay, so the magic word to write down, I hope everybody's ready, is masks for all. That's the number 4, masks for all. Here's how this magic works. How this magic word works. Go to masksforall.co. You see it on the screen there, and you'll see how to make your own mask so that you don't take masks away from hospitals that need the special ones. Text that word to 50409, and that will send a message to your legislators and your governor demanding Mask for All executive orders. Here's why you need them. If you go to a shop and somebody there is not wearing a mask, they could kill you. We've already seen this on public transport. The bus driver who died when somebody on his bus coughed without wearing a mask. But it's not just coughing, it's talking. We actually know talking is the main way this thing spreads. So we need to make sure if you're going to be safe in your community, go to your shop and demand that they have a no mask, no service policy. That's going to keep you safe. Otherwise, you go in that shop, person behind you not wearing a mask, they could kill you, right? This is a public health issue. This is not a personal responsibility thing. If we get 80% of people wearing a mask, it could save your life, it could save the economy, it could put us back on track.
It is Monday, the 6th of April of 2020. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays, because with the amount of lies spread this last weekend, we had to make quite a effort to turn it into a gourmet dish, because Lies are very bitter, very, very bitter. No way to sweeten them up, no matter how hard they try. Navarro, apparently, a newly appointed Mick Mulvaney scientist, failed economist, is now a scientist beyond parallel compared to Dr. Fauci. Yeah, they got into a shouting match. Navarro says he's got scientific research, and Fauci said, sorry, that's just anecdotal evidence. You don't really have scientific research on whether this stuff works on coronavirus and COVID-19. Works great on lupus. Works great on malaria. Not enough science yet for coronavirus, but don't tell the Trump administration, because they're buying it all up, putting it in the stockpile, because it's not the states. It's not the folks who are suffering from lupus or malaria, for that matter. It's theirs, not ours. Theirs. The federal government's, which is different than the states. I'm still trying to figure it out. But regardless, looks pretty much, since Rudy is in on this too, that it is a big scam. And there must be a lot of stock owned in Novartis. What is the company? Whatever pharma company it is, there's a lot of stock being owned and traded and sold for big profits. I'd be looking at Burr and Loeffler. Did they buy a bunch of malaria drugs? I wonder. The way that Trump is going out on a limb, to the point of, during his campaign speech, disguised, once again, as a coronavirus presser, when Dr. Fauci was asked about the dangers of colocloin, or whatever it's called, the anti-malarial drug for lupus patients, the dangers involved, Trump said, I've already answered that 10 times. You don't need to answer it. Meaning, keep your trap shut, you little twerp. So Navarro and Fauci got into a shouting match, according to sources inside, over what the science is. Apparently Navarro is, well, he's a failed economist, and he's dabbling in science now. Remember, where did Navarro come from? Jared saw his name in a book. Wow. That's all we need. Probably from Regenery Press. That's the kind of books they read. Anyway, Navarro, failed economist, now attempting to do science, got into a shouting match with Dr. Fauci, when Navarro says, oh, the colloquial, there's all sorts of science on it, all sorts of science, but no science on coronavirus. Not enough. And so here we are. Trump is on the TV, or at least his proxies, like Navarro and others, are out there, or even Rudy, pushing the colloquial. Because somebody's got to make some money. And all those lupus patients who now cannot get their medicine. Sounds like eugenics to me. And when you mention eugenics and put it up next to the power structure in power right now, it's not a stretch. Trump has already spoken about his superior genes, and how those who are not as successful as he in business must have inferior genes and must be done away with. How many casinos did Trump bankrupt? And how many times did he bankrupt them? I don't consider that the epitome of success brought on by superior genes. Not one bit. But it seems that the Secretary of Navy has gone to Guam. Now, this is according to a Reddit, some Reddit posts. Now, take it with a grain of salt. It looks legit, and folks that I respect as being able to analyze these things say it looks legit, but still, it's the internet, so take it with a grain of salt. A transcript of the Secretary of the Navy explaining to the sailors, the troops, why their leader had to be taken down in such a disrespectful way. And it doesn't sound like the sailors are having it. They love their captain. And now their captain has coronavirus. I wonder if Trump's going to take his pension. Yeah, he would do that now, wouldn't he? Well, I should mention also that Trump fired the Inspector General that took the whistleblower report to Congress. By law. He followed the law, and Trump had to purge him because he showed disloyalty to Trump, especially since it was Trump who nominated him and had him push through Mitch McConnell's graveyard. Because now Trump wants to have his own lawyer oversee the $2.2 trillion relief package. Because who needs an IG? Inspector Generals? Who ever heard of that? Well, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? At the top, health experts agree that everyone should wear masks in public to end this pandemic. And I'm seeing more and more people doing it without being ordered, but those orders will be coming soon. On the rest of the menu, a tiger at New York City's Bronx Zoo tested positive for coronavirus, and is not only the first animal in America to be tested and the results come back that animal has coronavirus. It is the first tiger anywhere in the world. I don't think we can blame it on the Chinese, Donnie. Defense Secretary Esper defended the firing of the Navy ship captain as a matter of holding leaders accountable when they issue warnings about a virus outbreak that makes Trump look bad. You just don't do that. And former NFL kicker and New Orleans Saints hero Tom Dempsey has died from complications of coronavirus at the age of 73. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where Ireland's Prime Minister has returned to medical practice to help in the coronavirus crisis there. Now that's called civic duty, something our guy has no idea what civic duty, what's that? And after arsonists torched several cell phone towers, the UK announced that the 5G coronavirus conspiracy theory is dangerous, fake nonsense. And we're seeing that fake nonsense, dangerous by the way, being played out here in Southern Oregon. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, which is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, who does so much more, by the way, and we thank Kelly for doing all of it. If you would then take a gander to, yes, we use that sort of language around here. If you would take a gander to the leftish of the page, you will notice our link to our Patreon page. And thank you to all of you out there whose generosity has sustained us over all these many years. And thank you to our new Patreons as well. If you could afford the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, especially in these perilous times, and I apologize for holding out the hat during this time, but Resistance Radio works on a shoestring budget, and you have been able to lace up the shoes with those shoestrings. Thank you. Though the bulk of what we do does come out of our own wallets, we would still be unable to do it without your help. Your generosity has helped us pay our bills, amass funds to be able to buy newish machinery, which we've done a couple of times over the course of 9 years of continuous 24/7, 367 Resistance broadcasting, as the founders originally intended. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, go to @Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and so much more as well, and we thank Tom for all of it. I take care of Justice Putnam because who else would? And who else would I let? Indeed. But anyway, follow me there because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then post that on social media, except for Facebook, because I only have, like 8 or 9 more days left until my suspension is up, and then they decide that they want to suspend me again. I found out what the first post was that got me suspended. It was pointing out that Facebook had censored someone else's post as fake news. And what was it fake news about? Yeah, coronavirus and racism and all of that. And apparently, posting that and other issues of fake news as pointing out that it was fake news was considered bullying and harassing the people posting fake news. That was the first post of 8 posts and comments that were reported as bullying and harassing. Now, I just got to say, when you have pictures of Obama being lynched and you say, F you racist, apparently the F you racist is bullying and harassing the bullying racists. And somewhere in the world, according to Facebook's term of use, they say, we believe in free speech, but our monitors could be somewhere in the world where they're going by local standards, like you don't say anything bad about the king. So that's what Facebook is basing their censorship on. I noticed that the Trump brats hardly ever get suspended. Muted, but not suspended. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeart, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, well, I'm going to get through it. It's Monday. That's the universal excuse on Mondays, is that when you're messing up, you always blame it on Mondays. And that's what we're doing here. Okay, let's dive into this first offering out of the Associated Press by Jennifer Peltz. Oh, how coincidental. Peltz. And Dateline New York, a tiger at the Bronx Zoo is tested positive for the new coronavirus in what is believed to be the first known infection in an animal in the U.S. or a tiger anywhere in the world. The 4-year-old Malayan tiger named Nadia and 6 other tigers and lions that have also fallen ill, but no bears. They are believed to have been infected by a zoo employee who wasn't yet showing symptoms, the zoo said. The first animal started showing symptoms on March 27th, and all are doing well and expected to recover, said the zoo, which has been closed to the public since March 16th amid the surging coronavirus outbreak in New York. But the test results stunned zoo officials. I could not believe it, Director Jim Brennany said, but he hopes the finding can contribute to the global fight against the virus that causes COVID-19. Any kind of knowledge that we get on how it is transmitted, how different species react to it, that knowledge somehow is going to provide a greater base resource for people. Now, this is anecdotal. I'm not a doctor, but I did read a study, an actual peer-reviewed study, by the way, where it's showing that cats seem to hold on to the virus, or felines. Felines seem to hold on to the virus longer than canines do. Canines aren't necessarily impervious, but they don't seem to transmit or hold the virus as a detriment to their biological system, whereas a cat can transmit it without necessarily getting sick, but they can also get sick. The USDA said it's not recommending routine coronavirus testing of animals in zoos or elsewhere, or of zoo employees. And I would say, why? Why not? Still, Rooney said a small number of animals in the U.S. have been tested through the USDA's National Veterinary Services laboratories, and all those tests came back negative, except Naughty's. The coronavirus outbreak around the world are driven by person-to-person transmission, experts say. There have been a handful of reports outside the U.S. of pet dogs or cats becoming infected after close contact with contagious people, including a Hong Kong dog that tested positive for a low level of the pathogen in February and early March. Hong Kong agricultural authorities concluded that pet dogs and cats could not pass the virus to human beings, but could test positive if exposed by their owners. Some researchers have been trying to understand the susceptibility of different animal species to the virus and to determine how it spreads among animals, according to the Paris-based World Organization for Animal Health. Hope Yen of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. With the military under broad pressure to step up its coronavirus response, Defense Secretary Mark Esper defended the firing of an aircraft carrier commander who sought help for sailors during an outbreak as a matter of holding leaders accountable. He also said the matter was under review. Yeah, they're going to try to take the guy's pension away from him, too. Everything. They're going to take everything for him. They're going to kick his family out on the street. And holding leaders accountable? Trump just said he fired an AG because he cannot be held accountable. Only he can hold himself to account. Because he's the sun god. In two television interviews, Esper said acting Navy Secretary Thomas Modly, the acting Navy Secretary went to Guam and lambasted the captain sailors for, I don't know, liking their captain, apparently. Can you imagine if some missiles were coming at that aircraft carrier and the captain tried to get some help from command, and command said, sorry, but the president says it might make him look bad if we help you? Yeah, that's supporting the troops, right? Well, Esper said Modly made a very tough decision to oust Captain Brett Crozier of command of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, which is docked in Guam, and that he supported the decision because Esper is a high-paid shill lobbyist for the defense industry. Come on. It was based on his view that he had lost faith and confidence in the captain, based on his actions. And it was supported by Navy leadership, really. Still, The Pentagon chief declined to explicitly say he agreed with Modley's assessment, noting that there is an ongoing investigation. This could ultimately come to my desk. I think Secretary Modley laid out very reasonably, very deliberately the reasons why. And I think when all those facts come to bear, we will have a chance to understand why Secretary Modley did what he did. Well, of course he did what he did because it embarrassed Trump. Crozier circulated a memo to Navy leaders last week that was obtained by news media. Now, when they say circulated to Navy leaders, they mean he went up the chain of command. Please, let's get this right. In which he urged speedy action to evacuate the ship of nearly 5,000 sailors as the coronavirus began to escalate. Modley said, Crozier demonstrated extremely poor judgment in the middle of a crisis, although Navy officials later announced they would offload 2,700 sailors in the coming days. Yeah, he showed a lack of leadership by not keeping his trap shut if it was going to embarrass Trump by opening it. Videos went viral on social media over the weekend showing hundreds and hundreds of sailors gathered on the ship, chanting and applauding Crozier as he walked off the vessel, turned, saluted, waved, and got into a waiting car. His firing comes amid pressure on the military as it seeks to step up its response to the coronavirus outbreak, including sending 2 Navy hospital ships to assist New York and Los Angeles, except there's a total of 20 patients on both ships. Esper said the Pentagon was sending over 1,100 additional doctors, nurses, and other medical staff to New York as part of a COVID-19 operation that would have the military in charge of the largest hospital in the United States with 2,500 beds at the city's Jacob Javits Convention Center. The military now. How interesting. Esper issued new requirements for those working or visiting on Department of Defense installations regarding the use of cloth face coverings. He said that due to the extent practical, all individuals on department property will wear the coverings when they cannot maintain 6 feet of social distance from others. Wait a second. The mask is not a substitute for social distancing. Let's get that through our heads, Esper. As the coronavirus pandemic worsens and the country turns increasingly to the military for help, America's armed services has been struggling to get new recruits. As families and communities hunker down, the services, as a result, could fall thousands short of their enlistment goals if the widespread lockdowns drag on, forcing them to pressure current troops to stay on in order to maintain broader military readiness. Well, that sounds exactly the way Vlad wants it now, doesn't it? Also of the Associated Press, brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tom Dempsey, the kicker born without toes on his kicking foot, who made a then-record 63-yard field goal, died late Saturday while struggling with complications from the new coronavirus. He was 73. The Times-Picayune, New Orleans advocate, first reported Dempsey's death. Ashley Dempsey said that her father, who has resided in an assisted living home for several years after being diagnosed with dementia, tested positive for the coronavirus a little more than a week ago. The Orleans Parish Coroner has yet to release an official cause of death. Dempsey's game-winning field goal against Detroit on November 8, 1970, stood as an NFL record for 43 years until the Broncos' Matt Prater broke it with a 64-yarder in Denver in 2013. Dempsey was an old-school type kicker. He came forward on the ball, and there was some scandal around allowing him to have the special shoe that he had, because he was born without toes, and so he had somewhat of a half shoe. But I think cooler heads prevailed at the time, and he was allowed to continue playing, and he did kick that 63-yard field goal. Now, also, that was when the goalposts were at the goal line rather than at the back of the goal, 10 yards behind. But 63 yards was quite a distance, especially without the soccer-style wind-up. He just came straight onto the ball and kicked away, and that was quite a feat. I remember seeing it on television. And it wasn't that grainy. It was in color. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from our break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Adam Levy. Who's your favourite superhero? Captain Marvel? Superman? Well, in a minute you might just change your answer to the Wonder Chicken.
Yes, the Wonder Chicken. Strange visitor from this planet, a 67-million-year-old fossil that's helping researchers piece together the bird family tree.
An amateur fossil hunter dug up this specimen 20 years ago in Belgium. But it wasn't much to look at, just some damaged broken rocks with a few limb bones poking out. That is, until researchers recently decided to peer inside.
We took these not very promising-looking rocks and CT scanned them, and when we did that, we were amazed to discover that inside the rock was a beautiful, nearly complete, three-dimensionally preserved bird skull.
Paleobiologist Daniel Field of the University of Cambridge in the UK. The result was so striking that coming up with a nickname for this newly discovered species was easy.
The combination of the shock and the chickeny nature of the fossil resulted in the name Wonder Chicken.
And the specimen isn't just special because of the incredibly preserved skull. The Wonder Chicken is actually a record breaker.
So this is actually the oldest fossil ever found that's clearly a representative of the group of modern birds.
The Wonder Chicken walked the Earth less than 1 million years before the asteroid impact that wiped out dinosaurs. In fact, this approximately 400-gram, or about 7/8 of a pound, bird would have been a contemporary of many of the best-known dinosaur species, like Tyrannosaurus rex or Triceratops. Even though great amounts of evolutionary history can now be deduced by studying the genomes of living species, fossils like this one can still play a valuable role. For example, they can help pin down the date of branches in a family tree. The Wonder Chicken fits into the bird family tree right around the split between chicken-like birds and duck-like birds.
So fossils provide irreplaceable information for evolutionary studies because they provide the only direct evidence we'll ever have of how evolution has actually taken place.
And given the incredible detail in this specimen, the team are hoping that there's still plenty to learn. from this fossil fowl.
So I think there's still a number of mysteries that this fossil is going to shed light on.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Adam Levy.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
What does the coronavirus teach us about our election system? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. On Tuesday, March 17th, Arizona, Florida, and Illinois held their primaries as planned, but Ohio postponed its primary, as have other states, including Georgia, Maryland, and Louisiana, and for good and not pretextual reasons. The coronavirus could put at risk voters and poll workers, and fear of being infected by the virus could keep many voters away from the polls altogether. But actually going to the polls should not be a prerequisite for voting. Some states allow voting by mail. Absentee ballots traditionally required a good reason why the voter couldn't vote on Election Day, but some states are now allowing no excuse necessary absentee ballots. And some states allow early voting, which increases turnout and would reduce the possibility of infection and fear of being infected. The failure to disallow early voting, no excuse absentee voting, and voting by mail, as a practical matter, these function as a method of voter suppression. Of course, none of these methods for allowing people to vote is required, even though these methods enhance voter participation and democratic principles and the constitutional principle of one person, one vote. Nonetheless, not having these methods of voting still conforms to the laws of the states where the voting occurs, and those laws will remain in effect unless and until they are changed. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day that the United States declared war on Germany and entered World War I. The war had been raging since 1914, but the U.S. did not enter the conflict until 1917. Dubbed the War to End All Wars, the conflict transformed the work experience for many women. As men went off to fight, industries looked to women to fill the labor shortage. By the end of the war, 3 million new women workers had taken jobs in war industries and at work sites like food production facilities and textile mills. A year after the U.S. entered into the war, the Seattle Union Record described the impact on women workers, writing, "There has been a sudden influx of women into such unusual occupations as bank clerks, ticket sellers, elevator operator, chauffeur, streetcar conductor, railroad track walker, section hand, locomotive wiper and oiler, locomotive dispatcher, block operator, drawbridge attendant, and employment in machine shops, steel mills, powder and ammunition factories, airplane works, boot blackening, and farming." the Department of Labor established the Women in Industry Service to address the needs of this growing women's workforce. After the war, the initiative was renamed in 1920 to the Women's Bureau. Its charge was to, quote, formulate standards and policies which shall promote the welfare of wage-earning women, improve their working conditions, increase their efficiency, and advance their opportunities for profitable employment. Yet after the war, many women were not able to keep their new jobs. Men returning from the battlefront expected women to return home and open up jobs for male workers.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Monday, April 6, 2020. I'm Mark Boulanger. As the COVID-19 pandemic spreads around the world, labor unions are demanding swift action from their governments. A recent survey conducted by the International Trade Union Confederation shows that many governments are not adequately funding their health care systems. The ITUC is the labor organization which represents national union centers such as the Ghana Trades Union Congress at the world level. I talked to the ITUC's General Secretary, Sharon Burrell, and asked her how governments around the world are responding to the pandemic.
Only 50% of countries actually are providing free health care. Now, we have seen some governments enhance health care measures since then, but unless there is free universal access to health care, whether it's the current public health systems or some requisitioning of private health support in some parts of the world where the public capacity has been stripped, sadly, of funding, people have to have access. Public health principles are essential. We must protect those frontline workers, but we must also ensure that people have access freely and without discrimination. And, of course, we know that there are many groups of people excluded, not only citizens of some countries, but indeed the migrant workers, refugees, and that's also not good for controlling the virus, but it's also disastrous in humanitarian terms. So we need public health solidarity everywhere. The initial demands for government response were in fact paid sick leave, wage guarantees, income support that goes beyond those workers directly employed to those in non-standard forms of work, platform business, freelancers, informal workers, many others in our economies who are not covered and have fallen through the cracks of a regulated labour market. And then, of course, support for rent, mortgages, loans, so people are not turfed out on the streets because they've lost income and can't pay. We've heard tragic stories of people having to negotiate either deferred payment or part payment of rent and car payments and other areas because they're not receiving their wages. And even if they fight to get income support from their employer or from the government, then the vulnerability of that is obvious. And, of course, healthcare, freely accessible, non-discriminatory healthcare. It's critical. And as I indicated, we are not seeing that universally. That must change. We've now added to those criteria two others. One is global action. And the global coordination around monetary policy and liquidity that goes into the real economy is obvious. The call for debt relief and the criteria to be aligned not with the old structural adjustment policies that actually kill economies and actually discriminate against working families, but indeed to look at the sort of aligned commitment from those governments to SDG-related investments in health, in areas of decent work, in income support, and in social protection. But we also need an urgent drive now for social protection, a global social protection fund. I can't stress enough the devastation that would be writ large if people don't have income and they don't, in fact, have food and water in some countries. A global social protection fund is at the heart of our demands now, And we need social dialogue to deliver both the original demands and the global funds to support those who are in countries without the capacity to do so. The humanitarian cost is, of course, our first priority. But unless we get this right, then we won't even be sustaining basic economies, let alone being in a position to rebuild.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about caring for each other through global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Ash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 44 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of about 60 degrees and an overnight low tonight in the mid to low 40s. Cloudy skies early, followed by partial clearing. Winds will be light and variable, picking up tonight out of the north-northwest, about 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then a lot of sun tomorrow with a few passing clouds, with winds out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour and a high of about 67 to 70. And it looks like we're going to have pretty nice spring weather here in Southern Oregon. And I wouldn't call them balmy nights. The overnight lows look like for the next week or so should be in the mid to upper 40s. And daytime highs in the upper 60s to mid 70s. So, well. All right, it looks like grass pollen is at a moderate range here in the area. Regionally, the air quality index is in that good range at 20 parts per million, and the daytime UV index remains high at 6. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.86 inches. Visibility is at 6 miles, and relative humidity is at 90%. Oh, I should mention that we did have quite a bit of rain over the weekend, and any amount of minerals that fall from the sky is a good thing, I say. All right, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. I should mention, as we get into weather from around the world, that the Jackson County coronavirus infection is at 33, and that has held steady since Saturday. Though I think maybe somebody took the day off, because I suspect that it is considerably higher now than the 33. London is 63 degrees and sunny, with their prime minister in the hospital because of coronavirus. Paris is 54 and cloudy, and they're looking to lock down the whole country because of coronavirus. Rome is 68 and sunny, and they thought they had a flattening of the curve, but they're starting to get more coronavirus. Kyiv is 60 degrees and fair. Vlad's still pretty much telling the Ukrainian president what to do. So we don't really know how much true coronavirus is in that country. Kabul is 50 degrees with thunder in the vicinity and coronavirus everywhere. Hong Kong is 61 with a rain shower and a flattening of coronavirus. Tokyo is 51 and partly cloudy, and they're going to take extra measures because of coronavirus. Sydney, Australia is 61 with showers in the vicinity, and they're taking extra measures because they got a lot of coronavirus. San Francisco, California is 45 degrees and cloudy, remaining under a statewide shelter-in-place order because of coronavirus. And New York is 54 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny, but you better stay inside because of coronavirus. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Ireland's Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, has re-registered as a medical practitioner and will work one shift a week to help out during the coronavirus crisis, his office said yesterday, Sunday. Varadkar worked as a doctor for 7 years before leaving the profession to become a politician and was removed from the medical register in 2013. He rejoined the register in March and offered his services to the country's health service executive for one session a week in areas that are within his scope of practice. Many of his family and friends are working in the health service. He wanted to help out even in a small way, a spokesman said. Last month, Health Minister Simon Harris launched a recruitment drive for the country's struggling health service to tackle the coronavirus outbreak with a stark message. Your country needs you. The HSE said it has spoken to thousands of healthcare professionals who may be eligible to return after it received more than 70,000 responses for its Be On Call for Ireland initiative. Varadkar comes from a medical family. He is the son of a doctor and a nurse, and his partner, 2 sisters, and their husbands all work in healthcare.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Guy Falconbridge and Kate Holton of Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A conspiracy theory that links 5G mobile telecommunication masts to the spread of the novel coronavirus is dangerous fake news and completely false, Britain said on Saturday after masts in several parts of the country were torched. When asked by a reporter about the so-called theory that 5G telecommunication masts could play a role in the spread of the disease, British Cabinet Officer Minister Michael Gove said, "That is just nonsense, dangerous nonsense as well. Mobile phone masts have in recent days been vandalized and telecom staff abused in Birmingham and central England and Merseyside in northern England, damaging connectivity at a time when people are relying on it more than ever." An arson attack at a tower in Birmingham, owned by BT, Britain's biggest telecoms company, caused significant damage. NHS England's National Medical Director Stephen Powis said the 5G conspiracy idea was fake news with no scientific backing that risked damaging the emergency response to the outbreak. The 5G story is complete and utter rubbish. It's nonsense. It's the worst kind of fake news, Powers said. The reality is that the mobile phone networks are absolutely critical to all of us. Those are also the phone networks that are used by our emergency services and our health workers. And I'm absolutely outraged, absolutely disgusted that people would be taking action against the very infrastructure that we need to respond to this health emergency. Vodafone, the world's largest mobile operator, said the attacks were now a matter of national security. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.